Well, good afternoon. As the ambassador said, my name is Marie-Josée Lebrun, and I'm the immigration program manager responsible for Greece. My office is based at the Canadian Embassy in Rome, and we cover Italy, Greece, Malta, and Albania. I have some good news to share with all of you. CIC, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, underwent a modernization period that started a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and we're really starting now to see the fruits of this modernization. As you can tell by the website behind me, individuals who want to study in Canada can now apply online. So finally, online applications are alive and well for a student permit application. CIC has redeveloped and reimagined their website. And I want to point out a few tools because I'm certain that it would be of interest to you and your students. There is now on the front page what we call a wizard, whereby the individual interested in studying in Canada can have an interactive question and answer period, at the end of which a series of questions, depending on the various answers that were given by the applicant, then that person is led to an application and then can follow up by applying online immediately. So that means that fees can now be paid by credit cards. It means that documents can be uploaded to the applications. It means that supporting documentation can be uploaded to the application. And all of this online electronic application can then be quickly reviewed and assessed, and feedback is given in a more rapid manner to the applicant. So it's had its success. Specifically for Greek citizens, there's an added advantage because, as you may know, Greek citizens do not require a visa to enter Canada. So if somebody is interested in applying for a student permit, the only thing that they apply for is the actual permit. So with the e-application, we no longer need to have the passport, we no longer need to include anything in the passport, and the application, the process has been really streamlined. This is not risky business on our part. We do have our quality assurance, and we do various exercises to ensure that the process is as strong as it was with the paper application. But this is just one element of the modernization, and the student permit was identified as one of the first products that we would encourage online applications for. So having said that, the old paper application accompanied with passport is still alive and well. In certain instances, it may be preferable to apply on paper. For instance, if you're a national of a country that requires a visa and a passport. I'm thinking in my area, Albanians require visas. And so we still offer the service, the old process of the online, of the paper application. What is interesting is that even with the paper application, all of the guidelines to apply, all of the forms to apply, all of the checklists that help the applicants apply, that is also in the same place on the website. So there's a unique point where anyone interested in anyone interested in studying in Canada can go and it really helps that person go through an application step by step. I have to say though that the starting point when a person is seriously wants to apply for a permit, the starting point is to have a letter of acceptance from a Canadian university. So that is the starting point. So once they have registered, once they've been accepted, then they can either opt to do the online application or the paper application. So this line of business is very important to us, and we put a lot of our modernizing effort towards making the application process more transparent, more streamlined, and faster. I don't know if anyone has questions or if there's a topic in particular that you would like for me to comment on. I think the most exciting thing in recent past has been this advent of the online application, but I'm open to any and all questions.
Thank you very much. Well, I suspect there may be some questions from guidance counselors in the room. And if any of you would like to ask questions, please feel free. We have a portable microphone that we can pass around. The floor is open. Are there any questions from the guidance counselors who are present here this afternoon they would like to ask? Bring you a microphone, and perhaps I can ask you to just identify yourself.
Sure. It's Kostas Kondogiannis from the National Technical University of Athens, associate professor here at the Technical University of Athens, and more than 15 years professor at the University of Waterloo, Canada. I'd like to ask you, we used to have these NSERC funds in Canada, Discovery grants, strategic grants and so on. And traditionally, the cooperation between EU and Canada would require that each party has its own funding. Is there any provision from the Canadian part, NSERC or any other funding agencies, to expand this so that would cover more than basic project needs like travel? So is there any provision for Canada funding external universities in collaboration?
I don't know that I can answer the question directly. We will definitely take note of it, but there are discussions underway, as I understand it. There may be others in the room. The FP7 program, I understand, is coming to an end, but I understand there are discussions ongoing about Horizons 2020, and we had hoped to have a representative at this forum to talk about it, but I understand that the discussions are still ongoing, and thus it was a little premature. But would any of my colleagues from Canadian universities wish to talk a little bit about possible bridges in terms of funding, whether it's NSERC or other possible opportunities for partnership, perhaps McMaster or Mr. Braniff from the Perimeter Institute, or any others who might be able to shed some light. Mr. Eichenbach, I think you raised your hand, so we'll defer to you.
Yes, we have a successful partnership on an FP7 program around accessible, inclusive design. And our researchers actually the architectural lead on the program. And as you rightly identified, it is a challenge to identify Canadian partners' funding sources to make this possible. And what we've been able to do is restructure an existing grant from the Canada Foundation for Innovation, a major new initiative fund grant, to make it possible that it would be counted as a contribution towards that project. And I know there's lots of discussions behind the scenes at the Tri-Councils what could be done. There used to be a special opportunity fund that doesn't currently exist. So I think creativity is the word, but there may be other colleagues in the room who have experiences in that field.
Would anyone else be able to comment, Professor?
Yeah, NCIRC it has a number of programs, a number of funding programs. So far, because I have been interested in looking into collaborations with big colleagues here, I may be wrong, but I have not seen anything. I have not looked recently, but I have not seen any program. There are partnership programs that are coming out of NSERC, but most of them are for partnerships with industry in Canada or partnership between universities in Canada. I have not seen any program that is targeted specifically in having in developing partnerships with European universities and more specifically with Greek universities. But I'm interested to be able to answer this question myself, and we will definitely look into it in the near future. I have my own colleagues that I would like to be able to collaborate with.
I think Mr. Gay has a comment.
The Quebec government has its own granting councils, and there are matching funds for people participating in the 7 framework plan and the 8, obviously, that will be coming within a few months. So as far as Quebec is concerned, there are funds to have researchers jumping in the project that would be submitted by a European institution or European network of institutions.
Thank you very much. We will see if we can pursue that a little bit more. I think we had a question here. Okay, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Liliana Gaparlido. I'm a college counselor at Athens College, Tijuca College, here in Athens. Thank you for holding this event, and we're really looking forward to meeting a lot of Canadian admissions officers for undergraduate programs. I have 2 immediate questions now. The one has to do with faculty-specific rankings for universities. Usually the rankings you refer to talk about the whole university. However, for Canadian university students, basically apply to a specific faculty within a specific school. It helps us if there is some ranking that you would recommend we look at. That's my one question. And my other question, I guess, shows my ignorance of Canadian universities, but I would like the gentleman from Perimeter. I wasn't sure, do you only have a graduate program for master's and doctor's degrees, or do you have an undergraduate program as well?
No, there's no undergraduate programming. It's all master's and doctorate and postdoc.
Thank you very much.
Would someone like to address the first question, perhaps Dr. Slater and perhaps others as well?
There are some rankings of programs. We cannot really refer to a ranking of faculties, like Faculty of Arts, because the faculties of arts don't all have the same programs in them. Like at my place, communication is in Faculty of Arts, and some other places is in the Faculty of Social Sciences. So I don't think it's a very good guide looking at faculty ranking. You have to look at program, physics, chemistry, and so on. There's some of these rankings. I don't really look at them very frequently, so I cannot go way beyond that in my answer. I think that personally, I think the rankings are much more important at graduate level than they would be at the undergrad level, especially in a country like Canada, where the programs are, pretty good everywhere. So I think at graduate level, yes, you should look at these things. Undergrad level, I don't put a lot of weight on these things, personally. My colleagues can disagree with me.
Yes, I would just like to underline that the differences amongst universities in Canada are much more, dare I say, maybe not marginal, but the differences are it's a much more well-controlled system than in the US, where the system is allowing for a huge range of quality, differences of quality. In Canada, quality assurance is quite mature, so that one can be certain that one Canadian institution, that every Canadian university will have a very high minimum standard. That doesn't really answer your question either, but perhaps there's someone else who has more.
Dr. Schlater and then Mr. Gay.
Just let me give you an idea or an example of this. I teach in the Department of Physics. There's two small universities in the maritime provinces. One of them, San Francisco Xavier University, doesn't have a graduate program. It's a small university in a small town. And I can tell you across Canada, we're all looking for these graduates from San Francisco Xavier. Their physics program is really good. They're winning awards and so on. And yet, if you look at international rankings, they're nowhere to be found. So it's this kind of thing at the undergrad level. In fact, I think your Dean of Science graduated from that place, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Gay?
Well, the rankings we were referring to, there are three. The three most common international rankings are the Shanghai ranking, QS, and Times of Higher Education. And in each of these cases, now you can get the figures by broad discipline. So there are possibilities of comparing the universities, for example, in law and natural sciences or biomedical. But I would agree with my colleague. These are for research-intensive institutions. And these are for research-intensive institutions with a faculty of medicine, I would say. And if we're performing very well in these rankings because we have a huge faculty of medicine, I'll be perfectly honest with you. In Montreal, you have the Université du Québec à Montréal, which is a very good university in the humanities and social sciences, and they don't appear in the rankings, and they will never appear in these rankings because they don't have a huge faculty of medicine producing lots of papers, basically.
Mr. Weinstein?
I'm going to take a slightly different approach because I do agree in part with my colleagues, although I think we've got to be realistic. When our colleagues demonstrated that your IB students are looking at Stanford, Harvard, they're looking at all of these sort of name brands, that the rankings do become a very important component of one's decision to determine whether or not they want to go to those schools. And so having had the pleasure of hosting 700 parents 2 weeks ago, and I said to each parent that I could meet and each student, why did you pick McGill? And it was because only one thing, and it was the rankings. So I would not underestimate the rankings, that you take them, you weigh them, and you sort of have to determine where they are in your scope of importance. But more and more, I think our parents and our students are looking at rankings in a significant way. And that's why I think the more scientific breakdown of the rankings is actually a good thing, because as my colleague from the University of Ottawa says, I think it's much better to look at the actual faculties, because chemistry versus physics could be completely different in one location, yet the overall ranking gives it an average that makes no sense. So I would break it down and take the chance to look at the details. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Other questions from our guests? I think we had a question here.
Hi, I'm Stelio Kalogudaki from the American Community Schools here in Athens, Greece. I'm a college counselor. My question is more specific, more visa-related for Madame Lebrun. Sorry. We had a student last year. She graduated, Albanian citizen, but we were able to go on the website and do the online application up to a certain point.
Exactly.
Maybe there was some sort of glitch, and then we contacted the consulate in Rome, got through somehow from Albania, and they said just send a paper application as well, because it got her to a certain point, and then she couldn't submit the payment. So maybe it was during the time of your upgrade, and I don't know exactly what the problem was.
Well, I'm glad that I'm glad that you're asking this question because, as I said earlier, well, CICSA started the modernization about 2 or 3 years ago with a new electronic platform, a new case processing platform, which is shared globally. So it means that a visa office in Rome, or a visa office in Delhi, or a visa office in China, we all work off the same database, essentially. So as we developed the processing, there were some glitches, and that's why there hasn't been a huge announcement about online application. It was a soft start, and as we worked through the glitches, then we were thinking of doing an announcement, but then I think that the reality of it is that the announcement is no longer necessary because it's caught on really, really well and really, really fast, and especially with the students because they're the younger applicants and they are more attracted by doing it that way. Uploading completed application and uploading documentation and scanning and all of this, I think, calls to the younger generation more than the rest of our applicants. So I'm happy to say that we haven't had glitches so far in the last little while, but you're right in noting that at one point with certain nationalities we will require the passport. So just I don't want to get too technical, and this may be too operational and not all that interesting, but what actually happens is that you go onto the CIC website and you create a My CIC account. So it's the same way as if you want to buy a book from Amazon.com. You go, you create your entity, your My CIC account, and from there you do your entire application. The application goes to a processing center, it goes to an officer, the officer reviews the application, and if the application is accepted, then a message will go to the My CIC of the individual, and in the case of an Albanian, he or she will receive a letter saying to please print this letter and send it to the following address with your passport. And at that point, we receive the passport and we finish processing the application. Maybe one day in the future, we will no longer need to have paper documents or even passports, maybe just electronic coding, which will be presented at the port of entry for individual to be properly documented. But we're still relying on the passport and the visa and the passport in some cases. I like to segue into work permit application. I'm hearing around the table postdoctoral or work of PhD students who go do part of their research in another university in Canada, in this case in Canada. These individuals are also our clients in that we like to document them with work permits. Research at the postdoctoral level, or invited researcher, invited graduate student, there's a whole bunch of invited categories with in the medicine sciences. We like to document these individuals with a work permit, and they also can apply online for these kinds of work permits. So we're trying to bring our processing tools to the 21st century, and we encourage people to go to the website, use the tool which is interactive, and go on from there with an online application.
Question?
Yes. It's not a question. I'd like to point out some things, some issues, if you like. So, the first point I'd like to make is, please keep this network alive. So it would be much beneficial for us if you can disseminate emails and presentations or just upload them on your website so somebody can just download them with a click. The other thing that you have to do, in my opinion, is that you really have to contact the Ministry of Education in order to resolve some issues. And I will mention one or two of them. The most critical issue is to update the framework which supports the mobility of students and staff between Canadian university and Greek university. This framework needs to be updated. So it's a critical issue for the academics in Greece. The second issue is that you have to discuss and find out some ways of sponsoring students in order to attend undergraduate and postgraduate studies in Canada, because by the moment studying in Europe seems much more attractive for them, and this is a really, really tough competitor for you. Also, I'm from those Greeks that can verify that studying in Canada is a totally different experience. I have 3 masters prior doing my PhD, and I've studied in many places in the world. But studying in Canada is something totally different. This is not well known in Greece. You are far away from our country, so you have to double your effort in order to motivate people to come and visit you. Once somebody visits Canada and take this experience studying in a university, has a totally different perspective. You have to point out this, emphasize this. And one critical thing is, and you can do it as an embassy, highlight how somebody can get a sponsorship to visit universities. Because in the rest of Europe, they have programs like Erasmus. They give funds for any undergraduate student who would like to visit every country in Europe. But it's nothing similar that you can do for Canada, and it's a pity. And please, repeat this forum next year. It will be very interesting to see the results and the outcomes of such meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for some very valid points as well. And maybe I can use this opportunity to make a commercial for the Canadian universities here, having been in Greece at 2 different times in the 90s and 15 years later. There is a challenge of sustained and ongoing engagement in the Greek market. And I think we referred to some of you to our market studies that were done for Greece and Cyprus as part of Minister Flaherty's new International Education Initiative. But I would encourage those of you who haven't seen them to read them. But my appeal to my friends from Canadian universities is there needs to be an ongoing, sustained effort. Kathy outlined a number of those opportunities and windows to make known the value of your institutions. We're a small embassy. We have a Facebook page now where we will definitely upload all of these presentations. But I think we need to think creatively about how we can raise the brand of Canadian institutions here. And one of them that's very important is presence on a continuous basis. It has to be sustained. There have been fits and starts over the last 15 years. So perhaps we can think collectively of that. Mr. Gay, you wanted to make a brief comment?
Yeah, just to respond to what you were saying, because my presentation was mainly concerning undergrad students. In my institution, it's probably the same with other Canadian institutions, PhD students. When we receive an application from, let's say, a very good PhD student, normally the fees in Quebec are in the neighborhood of $15,000 a year for 2 years, and then it's lower fees. But we have some tools, and the good, bright students, they would pay what a Quebec student would pay. That is around $2,000 a year. And the scary source is good students, not money. So in most disciplines, especially the disciplines, the lab disciplines, where there are lots of money, but it could be the case also at our Center for Public Law, for example, where there are lots of monies. The students, in addition of having a reduction of the tuition fees, he would get a scholarship from the research supervisor, enough to survive, to live quite well in Montreal. Another thing we have to mention, because I've heard that your students, they want to go to the UK or to France or to Germany. The cost of living in a city as like Montreal is about half of what you would pay in London. You know, you have to take that into account also.
But you have to persuade students, not me. That's the difference. You know, I will
now
in
you
your
know,
office.
so you will tell your students.
Yeah, of course.
I see that perhaps we have time for one more comment or question. I'm looking at the clock, and I know it's been a long day for many of you. I don't want to cut anyone off, but we probably should bring this to a close. I believe that there was a hand raised there. Perhaps there was another one. Do you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yes, actually, I would consider that in Greece we have quite good students, especially
in Greece we have quite good students, especially in technical sectors, engineering sectors, and so mathematics, computer science. So we had the program on the last year that they had diploma thesis and engineering diploma thesis that the fifth year. So one possibility would be to set up a framework by which, at least at that level of last year students who are quite mature and pretty much know what they want, to establish some collaboration on diplomas thesis. Which here in Greece, at least in engineering schools, it's pretty much like a master's thesis. The other is the possibility of credits among Greek universities and Canadian universities. And the funding will come later. I guess the funding relies more on the deans and the individual universities, but if we have established a framework by which credits could be obtained, I think that would be a very good, solid step.
Thank you very much for that comment. I think on that note, we will probably best move to conclude the day's session, but I'd be remiss if I just make a few very brief closing comments. I think it's fair to say that I learned a lot today, and I was impressed by the diversity and strength and opportunities of collaboration between Greek and Canadian universities. And I hope many of you who came today did likewise. I learned about agreements that we at the embassy didn't know existed. I also met some graduates of Canadian universities who are living and working in Greece, and I hope they and themselves will become future partners to help us spread the word about their institutions, but also about the value of Canadian education. And flowing from this, I hope that there'll be some new synergies that we can build upon. We'll start at the embassy by making sure that these presentations are shared and the participants who took part today are communicated to you. And we're always open to suggestions as to how we can build on some of the outcomes. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my team. We're a small, relatively small team at the embassy here in Athens. This project has been something that we've had in our mind for quite some time. As I said before, we're coming back to finding new ways of engaging and facilitating partnerships in an era where governments around the world are making hard choices about resources. So we cannot continue to do things the way we did maybe 15 years ago. That said, I am passionately aware of the importance of education as a bridge builder. And the fact that we had such a robust participation today, for our Greek friends, I'm particularly grateful for their presence. I think those of us who live and work in Greece know some of the challenges Greece is going through, particularly in the last couple of days, with some major challenges facing Greek universities. The fact that, notwithstanding that, they were here and spent a good part of the day at a very senior level, I think in itself was a statement of their commitment and interest in working more closely with Canada. I also really want to thank the Canadian universities who are very, very busy and have many competing priorities, but I think responded to our call to come to Greece, notwithstanding the headlines. And I think to see the quality of the people, the quality of the academic institutions, and the quality of students who come out of Greek universities, notwithstanding the many challenges. And we see the talent pool in all of our universities across Canada, and I hope that they will take back a message when they sit around this fora or at the Association of University and Colleges of Canada and elsewhere, that there are things happening here and there's a real opportunity to work more closely with Greek institutions. Finally, a big thank you to the many people on my team who have been working long hours to make this happen. And a leader is only as good as his team, and I mean that very sincerely. They all know how much I appreciate their work and the passion that goes behind it. There are invariably some lessons learned about how we can improve and do things better, but I'm very proud of what they did today, and I hope we can build on this experience to find ways of raising the brand and working to promote what Canadian institutions can offer to Greek students. One last note, as I said, it's all about the team, and the same in diplomacy. And as was noted before, we're very fortunate to have a very dynamic and strong team of Greek diplomats in Canada, from Vancouver to Montreal. And I mean this very sincerely. We speak often, we work closely together, particularly in the context of the 70th anniversary of Canada-Greece relations. Ambassador Angelopoulos is a tireless advocate for things related to building bridges. I admire him, I respect him, and we continue to try to work on both ends to raise the profile of Greece and to remind people that this is a country worth fighting for, and where there are good people trying to do creative and innovative things despite the challenges. So I salute Greek diplomacy, I salute my colleagues, because it's all part of working together to make things happen. So on that note, I'd like to bring this part of the forum to a conclusion, and to invite those of you who wish to join us tonight for a much more informal session of celebrating Greeks who have graduated from Canadian universities, and I hope will become even more engaged and serve all of them as ambassadors for Canadian institutions in Greece. So, σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Merci beaucoup, and I look forward to seeing you in the remainder of my mandate and helping in any way that I can to advance these new partnerships. Thank you very much.